Welcome to the MBN Solutions BossNData podcast. This episode is a special edition. It's the end of an era with Paul Laughlin. It's been a great pleasure and honour over the last decade or so to get to know, work, collaborate and socialise with one of the true legends of the UK data space. A man whose career has spanned a time that has seen the sector evolve from an occasionally misunderstood, quirky niche business operation to the juggernaut that now powers so much of the world's corporate, governmental and societal decision-making. In that time, he's been a source of knowledge, mentorship and inspiration, not just to me, but to a huge number of members of the data community. And I am absolutely delighted that he's here to join me in the studio today to reflect upon his career. It's the customer insight leader himself, Mr. Paul Laughlin.
Rob, you are too kind. Thank you. Good to be here. I now feel ancient, as if I'm just about ready to die, but thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome, sir. Former head of customer insights for both Lloyds Banking Group and Scottish Widows, Paul is an international speaker, writer, trainer and leadership mentor with a passion for the people side of data. For the last 15 years, he's been developing leaders and their teams across private and public sector organisations. He is also chief blogger for customerinsightleader.com and host of the Customer Insight Leader podcast. And if today wasn't special enough, I'm joined in the studio for the very first time by not one but two co-presenters who bring their own perspectives of Paul's contribution to industry to the show, whilst no doubt also managing to inject some dry humour, wit and, dare I say it, chaos into the proceedings. I'd like to introduce my second special guest, MBN Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Michael Young.
Thanks, Rob.
MBN is a leading provider of people solutions to fast-moving and disruptive businesses seeking the best in data and technology talent. Michael is also founder of the hugely successful Scotland Data Science and Technology Meetup Group and organiser of several high-profile data community initiatives. He acts as an advisor and mentor to startups, charities, third sector organisations and government agencies seeking to better understand data talent acquisition. And last, but by no means least, we are also joined by Mr. Graeme McDermott.
Morning, Rob. It's good to be here. I almost didn't recognise all of us in those introductions.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. Graeme is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Tempcover, a specialist short-term insurance broker, which became part of the RVU Group in 2022. He is a career data and analytics professional and often jokes he was literally born into data and analytics. He started his professional life in actuarial, the maths behind insurance, and has pretty much stayed in insurance data and analytics ever since. Graeme first met Michael 20 years ago and around the same time started to see Paul at data networking events, which encouraged an otherwise shy and introverted person to get out from behind his screen, and the rest is history. Okay, to kick us off, let's all take a trip in the Wayback Machine to where it all started. Paul, what's your story, sir? How did you get started in the data industry?
Wow. How long have we got? Gosh, where do you start? I guess I'd have to start with the science degree. So I did meteorology, oceanography and astronomy at Plymouth because it sounded interesting. I thought my main problem would be being bored over 3 years and that would be fun. So I did that. Then I began to think about a career. At the same time, I met the woman who would become my wife. So I had to suddenly think about getting married and providing for the family and this kind of stuff. So I took a job in the civil service, initially Companies House, and ticked the little box that you might get into data processing. That sounded like it might have more money in it, so I do that. Having discovered there was no money in scientific research, so this was going to pay the bills better. Stayed for a little bit, discovered if you were any good in IT in the civil service, you left. Otherwise, you got doing all the overtime in the world. So they were about to burn me out. So I got a job at TSB, as it was back in the day, before it became TSB again in more recent years. Had an IT career within that and what became Lloyds TSB. About a decade in total within IT. Genuinely done most jobs in IT, from kind of operations and technical support through to R&D and project management and architecture and all that kind of stuff. And then sort of got bored with being, I guess, not the driver of change. And increasingly IT was getting so much blame, it started to become more bottom covering and all about process to ensure we could prove it wasn't our fault that projects hadn't delivered. So I got the opportunity. I got headhunted internally, which is very exciting, by an actuary, which is less exciting, but there we go. And I got a job within actuarial, building their first data warehouse, as it was back in the day. So first badge of honour, I did build a successful data warehouse that was actually used, which not everyone can say. They have a data graveyard, as they do, but it was good for many years. And from there, started to build a data team. The business didn't really know what it was in those days. I was just hiring people who had the coding skills and the stat skills to do helping building the database and helping to make use of it. Started doing things like focusing on customer retention, because insurers didn't used to worry about losing customers. Not surprisingly, given we were the first ones there, made quite a lot of money out of that. Hugely benefited from a really good CEO coming along. I must give credit to Phil Loney, who for many years was CEO at Lloyds and then went on to other organisations. Phil really recognised that there was potential in what I was doing. In fact, he was the first person to challenge me after I'd moved across to look after reinsurance and things as well. You kind of can't do multiple things here. Do you want to go with this data analytics insight stuff, or do you want to stay and do reinsurance with the underwriters and the actuaries? Because I think your home's more marketing, really. So I said, okay, I think this data stuff's got a way to run in it. So I went and did the analytics there, and we began to do other things like better acquisition of customers, better marketing spend, all these kind of things, and gradually grew the function. Began to absorb the data management side, because my team was held back by poor quality data, so let's take them on board. The execution side, so we could prove we had short-term delivery, not just long-term value. So got the decisioning and the database marketing people, the market research side, so we can more deeply understand our customers. Brought it all together. In total, 25 years within Lloyds. Really saw the benefit of that holistic, all the technical skills together in one department approach. And then just got too old to do as I'm told. There were other things that changed, but you get regime change at the top, and after enough decades, you can't believe anymore that they're going to save the world, or that it's worth, again, doffing your cap and pretending you've got lots to learn from them until you've educated them on what they already need to know. So I also kind of wanted to prove to myself I could do it outside Lloyds. I think after being one employer for that long, you worry about being institutionalised. Have I just done so well because I've always stayed in this safe space? So I wanted to prove myself I was helpful to people outside. So I left, and over the last decade, I've run my own business doing training of technical teams, things like softer skills, coaching and mentoring of technical leaders to have influence and succeed at that kind of more senior level. And loved it. And now I've just got too old to do any work at all. And I'm going to retire soon and enjoy looking after the garden or whatever else it is that life holds for me in store next. But that's me talking for long enough anyway, Rob. That's kind of the backstory.
Amazing. There's definitely a supplementary there on institutionalisation and its impact on the industry. And I might come back to that. But on a personal level, what career contribution are you most proud of, and why?
I think I'd have to say it is two examples, apologies, but they're kind of the same thing manifesting at two times in my career. They're the difference I could help people make in their own growth. So I'm most proud during my time at Lloyds in hiring people from being graduates and helping them develop and grow right the way up to become over the years senior leaders and even take over from me in the end. So big call out to Andy Sutton, who now works in Australia. Lovely guy, delight to work for him over the years, but helping Andy and others grow and develop was the greatest joy of my life at Lloyds. And I think in the last decade, it's been coaching and mentoring work. I kind of, again, fell into it, discovered it could be something that was helpful, thought I'd be more doing training, but loved it. Got qualified in it, and the privilege of going on a coaching journey with someone maybe over a year or more, and them opening up to you, the trust in that safe space, and seeing them tackle their own internal issues, but then go on to more success and stretching themselves and promotion is great. And in that world, without breaching any confidences, a shout out to Tim Jones, who's now at Lego Group. Great leader. He's going to go on to even greater things in his career, but a joy to work with Tim over the years as well.
Amazing. At this point, gents, co-presenters, any supplementaries you would like to ask about Paul's early days or where he is now in the career?
I'm interested in that point about institutionalised, Paul. I mean, somebody definitely said that of me, and she knows who she is. So hopefully she's listening to this later. And I therefore took that as a challenge to prove them wrong, that after 17 years at the AA, I could go and get a job outside of the AA. And it's a really important point, I think, for people who, nowadays maybe people don't stay at companies so long, but, back 10, 15 years ago, people did. But equally now, I come across people in the data world who've worked somewhere for 5, 10, 15 years. They've grown through the ranks. I think, for me, I really enjoyed your last point about helping others, because I've definitely in the last few years got into mentoring, as a sideline, not a side hustle. I'm not earning anything from it, but just giving back. So I think it's really, really good point. I think really good for others to hear that.
Yeah, thanks, Graeme. I think I jump into saying that I kind of want to emphasise two things, I think. One, for those who are a long time at one organisation, you can still, during that time, have built a really effective network through conferences, through events, through other people you can share experience with, that positions you really well to actually have your own brand when you step outside that organisation. The other thing I'd want to speak up for, because so many people these days, as the norm, do move a lot, is there is something to be said for staying somewhere a long tenure. I think it takes quite a lot of courage. You tend to be there to see the results of what you put in. Did it work or not? You haven't moved on and run away. And it can give you a chance to really know that organisation, to have collaborated with different parts of it, to become one of those thought leaders in the organisation who knows how you get things done, knows it. So people like Dan Keller, who, for instance, been there a long time at Capital One, I think that longer tenure can also make you a special type of leader. So it isn't a bad choice on its own as well.
Grant. Michael, you had a quick point of observation.
I think just from myself as well, it's a real pleasure to be on the podcast today. And as Rob said at the start, I think I've known you from around about 2005, and just to have had continuous contact through almost 20 years. We've caught up quite often, but if I've not met in person, we've emailed or messaged and really kept in touch. And I think just to briefly mention, you really helped myself step into the world of data. Obviously wasn't working as a data professional, but you were the first manager I ever worked with and placed my first ever data professional with just at the end of 2005, maybe moving into 2006. So really good. I was reflecting on this, even just walking to work this morning, yourself, Graeme and Rob, really three kind of influential people in my career, my life, and really helped us grow MBN as well when I got started. So really good to be here today and to listen to all three of you. I'm excited.
Well, before we get too mushy and sentimental, Paul, we don't dodge the huge questions on this show. So the next one, what have been the most significant changes in the industry since your career began?
Yeah, it's a challenging big question to answer, isn't it? I think I'm going to resist saying that it's the growth in computing power or the sophistication of data science algorithms, because that's it waxes and wanes, but it's a constant momentum through technology development through all time, really. So every generation thinks it's especially fast at their time. I think over my career, I've probably more seen it's the level of visibility that's changed more than anything. I think probably two things in tandem. First, there is genuinely more scientific rigour, and the field is seen as more scientific than it used to be. When it's done at its best, data science has scientific rigour to it, and I think that's a good thing. And it raises the bar as to repeatability, as to intellectual thought, and the quality, potentially, of the work that's done. But I think the other has been the interest that's been achieved in the general public and at the top table of organisations. When I was starting out and earlier when I was creating and influencing with the insight and the analytics team, and I'm sure Graeme found the same, you had to do a lot of work to get that airtime at the board. You had to put in a lot of stakeholder work to get them even slightly interested in, maybe data could kind of give us a nudge in the right direction. I might take it into consideration, but I've been a leader for 100 years. I know best. And now you've actually got the dynamic the other way around. You've got CEOs, you've got leaders of organisations thinking, flipping heck, I better have an AI strategy. I better know what I'm doing here. Quick, you're the data person. Tell me what to do. So the potential for influence, I think, is very different. I think the norm of how we work as well. I wouldn't underestimate how much agile working has changed the style of the teams, and the expectation of collaboration and faster delivery in a different way of working than people were used to from IT teams. So it's a lot of themes, but probably I'd say the scientific rigor, the influence at a top table, and the expectation, and the collaboration, and that kind of approach. I'd also say I think we're starting to see, but I don't think it's enough yet, a recognition that there needs to be leadership development in this space. I think everyone's been so obsessed with land the technicians. Can I hire the data scientist, the data engineer, the data ops person that I need? Now they're beginning to realise maybe their real challenge is the leaders of those teams. And how do you help people who are very technical develop leadership skills and be good people leaders? I think that's an evolving trend as well.
And I've noted, because obviously being a huge fan of your work and having stolen millions of your ideas in the past, I noticed that people side of data has been a theme that you have consistently reflected on as you've spoken to who could be described as technical people, but who've worked really, really hard to develop those leadership skills. But I do think until we reach a point where it becomes the norm for somebody from the technical data stream to become chief executive officer, we will still have a little bit of a disconnect in that space.
Yeah.
Graeme, Michael, anything you want to jump in on with that?
Do you think it's a sort of shame to be leaving now, particularly on that last point? Where data is held in high regard, it's made it to the top table for a number of years, or is it no, get out while it's on a high, because the only way from it might be down?
Well, who knows, Graeme? You might be onto something. I mean, I did live through the AI winter, as they call it, that I was working in R&D teams on fuzzy logic and neural networks and that kind of stuff before it then went away because everyone decided expert systems hadn't really lived up to their promise and we might come back to it. So just a little warning for the next generation. We've been through a cycle before where everybody believed the hype that this was going to change the world. Yeah. And then because it didn't deliver real change and particularly financial help, everyone got cheesed off and thought it was overhyped and left behind, like COM systems potentially as well. Yeah. So just be cautious that you do harvest now at this time when you've got influence and you do prove that you deliver real value, not just increasingly shiny tech. But no, I think mainly, Graeme, it's just right for me for my time of life. These phases will come and go. But for me in my personal life, I'm just too old to keep working at this kind of level anymore. So it's right for me personally. And it's quite nice to go out on a high, I guess.
I think it is one of the benefits of experience, I think, and we're all of a certain level of experience. And I'm using a polite phraseology for age, because you can look back over careers that have spanned 20, 25, 30 years and you can see, oh my God, something's appearing. Oh my God, there's a hype cycle. Oh my God, it's going to change that. And I think now I'm at the point where I go, this thing looks a good thing and it's going to have very specific use cases and abilities to change, but it's certainly not going to change the world in the way that the marketing people try and pretend it is. So, Paul, there must have been some lows, fella. What have been the low points? What were most challenging and how did you overcome them?
So probably, I suppose, it's a good thing to ask, right? Because we don't talk about this stuff enough, probably. We all like to talk about our successes. So it's a good question, Rob. If I look back over my whole career, probably I'd say the lowest point was when there'd been a sort of takeover of the organisation. Another organisation with a very different culture had come in and merged with us. And I ended up with a line manager who I found it very difficult to get on with. Having had some great line managers in the past, here was a woman who was an extreme micromanager. Everything had to be done their way. It was very difficult to get her to step back, give the level of autonomy I'd always really enjoyed and found very helpful. And that got to me enough, together with changes in the culture, that I really began to doubt myself. I can remember really spiraling down to some extent and thinking, maybe I've just been lucky in the past. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm a bit crap, really. Maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. All the imposter syndrome was getting fed loads and loads. How did I overcome it? I recognised some things needed to change, that in the environment I was in, she wasn't going anywhere, and me working for her was not going to work. This was not going to do me any good. For me, it didn't, fortunately, and this is partly thanks to her, to give her credit, mean that I had to leave the organisation altogether. The group was big enough by that stage that I could say, you know what, Phil Loney's gone to be CEO of Scottish Widows. I'd love the opportunity to go and help him up there. How about I just leave here in Wales completely, go up and help lead the teams in Scotland and Bristol, and move completely out of general insurance into life and pensions. And it was well worth doing. It felt like a brave move. It was totally different people, totally different stakeholders, and in many ways a totally different culture, because it's part of a bigger group that had its own heritage and culture. But it gave me chance again to be more master of my own destiny, shape a culture, and slowly rebuild my confidence. So I guess from that, I'd also call out to other leaders, however successful leader you think you are, it can absolutely happen to you. And I hear this in coaching and mentoring, believe me, right up to CEO level, that you have those times when you really doubt yourself and you have experiences that make you spiral down. Nothing to be ashamed of. It can happen to all of us. Recognize something needs to change. Don't stay like that.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point you've just mentioned there. And as leaders or people running businesses and teams, they can actually sit and feel that for far too long. How long did it take you to really realise you had to take action? Or did you sit in it for too long, or do you feel as if you made that transition at the right time?
Oh, it's a good question, Michael. It's difficult now because it's quite a while, but that reaction probably took about 2 years.
Right, yeah.
Maybe a little long. And I got close to giving up completely, to that point where you can kind of pull it together, and you, as a leader, you're used to putting on a performance to some extent as well. But inside myself, the self-doubt was enough to think I just need to give this up completely. In fact, I'm not even sure I can face work anymore, So probably went on a bit long, but nevertheless, when I did escape, it was the right time because that opportunity was brilliant. Brilliant people to work with up in Edinburgh, loved it. Lovely team in Bristol as well. And actually moving to life and pensions and the kind of consultancy I needed to do almost gave me a chance to road test being out on my own with my own business, because I had to totally relaunch myself, do the consultancy as to what was needed, and then go and deliver it. So it all proved well. But yeah, maybe I left it a bit long, Michael.
No, it sounds, I think, moments like this can be a big transition in life and in people's careers.
Yeah.
Just linking back there, Paul, to that 2 year period, to what you and Graeme were saying earlier on about the reward that you've gotten out of being mentors. Did you have anybody in your world at that time that was acting in a mentor capacity, or was the only dynamic between you and the line manager?
At that time, when it really spiraled down, it was just me and the line manager. No, I had no mentor, I had no coach. So I think it's very good observation, Rob. If I'd had a coach or a mentor, I would absolutely have been able to use the sessions almost therapeutically to at least vent and to get someone else helping me have fresh perspective on it. So yeah, it would have helped.
Yeah, it's something I'm very pleased that we're seeing more and more from the perspective that I see it from, which is obviously, social media, public facing. There seems to be mentorship opportunities regularly. And my fear here is, and it's back to that personality type that was mentioned earlier on, that coming from a technological background, we know that there could broad generalizations drawn here, but sometimes it's people who are maybe not as outgoing and gregarious. They're maybe caught in that vicious cycle of reporting into an individual that's not working out, but they don't know where to go, and they certainly don't know who to talk to. And I think that one of the real benefits of mentorship is having, an objective ear, perhaps like yourselves or Graeme's, that could just say, no, that's not really right. Maybe you want to have a think about it. It's not you, it's maybe the situation. And I just feel that the more of that we do as a community and as an industry, the better we will equip our leaders for what's coming next.
Yeah, completely agree, Rob. I think it is important.
Moving away from the dark clouds, sir. Oh, sorry, Graeme.
So I think it's also a point that I think is true then, it's true now, which is there are lots of senior data leaders or heads of data in organisations that are not as big as Lloyds, not as big as I was at the AA, but even that wasn't big in terms of data at the time. And I definitely got to a point where I was no longer working for someone who was in the slightest bit technical for data, didn't come from a data background. And actually, I felt like I need someone who's got more experience than me, because I was probably at that point only in my, early 30s, mid 30s. And there was no mentoring around at that point. And actually, that's one of the reasons I looked outside of work, should we say, and started going to events, started going to networking to meet other people that you could see. And I think, some of the people I mentor now are in that same situation. They don't have someone they're working for they can give them the commercial and softer skills and all those sort of things. But for someone they want to talk to about, how do I approach this data problem? How do I approach segmentation? How do I approach replatforming? Whatever it is, they need that from someone who's been there, done it, and maybe been there and done it several times, for example. So it's quite an important thing that while some of it's moved on, some of it hasn't moved on, but maybe we're just in a better place because we've got more people out there willing to help everyone, get that leg up and get that understanding.
I think it, in some respects, harks back to even the way that I kind of introduced you, Paul, when I spoke about that quirky, slightly misunderstood part of the business. When Michael and I, and when all of us first started in this space, we were looking to try and find people for the teams that you guys were building, and finding those people was exceptionally difficult because they didn't fit into a nice easy bucket on monster.com that said, find your data guys in here. So you were looking at education, and you were looking at trends and patterns in the work that they'd done. Had they maybe done a bit of database work? Was there a little bit of interaction with stakeholders? You were looking at breadcrumbs to try and find the prize. And now I'm looking at where we are now, which is a much more well-established industry. But it does seem to me as if the next iteration perhaps focuses more on those people skills, leadership skills, commercial skills. To the point you made earlier on, Paul, the technology thing will always be there. There's always been the ability to crunch lots of numbers on big computers. But now that we have an established industry, perhaps it's time for the industry to look at itself and start providing a little bit more of that support framework internally for those that are coming through.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rob. I think the other thing I'd build on what you shared there is, I don't fully know what the answer to this is, but let me share the concern. Back in the day that you're describing, one of the advantages of the kind of people that you and Michael fed through to me was you began to get people from a diverse range of backgrounds. So I can remember a lot of really good analysts who came from an economics background, for instance, rather than the classic maths and stats degrees, people with history degrees, people with a diverse range of education. Now there's a bit of a risk that, you've got to have done a data science degree, you come through, you do a data engineering degree and you go and do a data engineering job. That's okay for some, but don't ignore the fact there may be important talent out there that hasn't realised this is the career for them. But in what they focus on that they find intellectually interesting, there is really robust analytical thinking in doing economics or doing history. There are other subject areas that could provide the best talent. It's actually about the people. It isn't about you've got the right label of the right degree.
I totally agree, and I would extend the conversation slightly further to also question the validity of whether or not the obtaining of a degree is absolutely necessary. Because when we look at cognitive diversity, or when we look at societal diversity, one of the things that I've spoken up about this in the past, and having worked heavily in the academic space, if everybody into the industry all goes through the same approach, then you're losing out on a huge section of society who quite literally can't afford to go to university for 5, 6, 7 years. So maybe we could have End of an Era Part 2 where we delve into those conversations in a little bit more depth. But looking back to the dark clouds of the dark days, but let's look at the sunshine and rainbows of the happy days. Paul, where have you been happiest as a customer insight leader? What role, what place, what company? Where have you been full of joy?
Wow. Well, I guess I've shared a couple. So there are multiple ones. So the people manager aspect within Lloyds, the mentor and coach in the business I've done. But to paint a more complete picture, probably, I also absolutely loved when we developed an attitudinal segmentation that we managed to overlay within Lloyds. It was the bringing together of a range of technical teams. It was getting really solid work done by the market research team, and then advanced statistical modelling because of the data that we had to manage to overlay that on behaviour and demographics. So it was intellectually satisfying. It brought together a diverse range of skills into the team, but then it also led to great creative output that you could enjoy performing, engaging people with. I remember having life-size aluminium cutouts of the personas of the segment. I actually broke down on the motorway once and had to be seen by passing cars lifting really stiff, what appeared to be human beings, to put the aluminium people by the side of the road. But I take them into boardrooms, and people would get excited about being on Team Savvy or whatever the name of the segment was. And it isn't always that segmentation is the answer. But what it was a project that people found intellectually fascinating and then captured the hearts and minds of the organisation. People could see, oh yeah, we've got this group of customers that are different. Yes, let's go and develop what they want rather than what we've always done. And it's more than just the automation machine has given you the right data product at the end. It's a vision of, we could have some creative thinking here. We can really engage hearts and minds in what could be possible and humanise it, give it a human face, have creative videos and all this kind of stuff. That was great fun. Great fun.
You use the phrase hearts and minds twice there in very short order. And to you and Graeme, as the data experts in the room, we hear this constantly. How important is the capturing of hearts and minds within the organisation in order for a data initiative to move from an idea to a successful outcome?
I think it's an interesting point. I think the hearts and minds is in two places. I think there's the you as the data professional, data leader, your team, and their hearts and minds, and are they in it? And sometimes in companies, the ebbs and flows of company ownership, and I was at the AA and went through 5 changes of ownership in my time there, can ebb and flow. But also having the hearts and minds of somebody probably on the top table. So in my case, I had went through a period where we talked about it earlier about where the data team were seen as the sort of like quirky people in the corner in the dark underneath the building, and we were 7 layers down the organisation from the CEO. And overnight, a transaction and change of ownership and strategy meant I reported to the group director of data, who sat on the board for both companies, so both our own company and the company that had bought us. Suddenly, hearts and minds on the top table in the C-suite was very much there, and followed on from that, working for someone whose hearts and mind was definitely in data, and brought me into organisations to help him sort out their data and analytics function, for example. So it can work both ways, both within the data team, but also with engendering that and finding someone. And I think Paul mentioned it earlier about working with people that really got it. And actually, if they leave and go somewhere else, quite often people go and work with them again, because that's almost more important than anything else for somebody.
Definitely.
Okay, part 1 is over. We're moving on to part 2. Graeme's quickfire fun round. Sir, you're up.
I like Paul has to get a cup of tea in now to get ready for his 15 questions in 5 minutes. So quick fire. This is about learning more about Paul, the person. And, I've known Paul for a long time, and I didn't know about the actuarial background, or maybe I've got so old I've forgotten about his actuarial background. But there aren't many of us that have got a background of in actuarial, for example. So let's start with the first question, Paul. How do you start your day? What happens first, apart from getting up, obviously?
Most days exercise, every day some quiet time. So time with God, time reading the Bible is a quiet, calming time for me before I start the day.
Favourite film?
Thought of being highbrow, but if I'm honest, Anchorman. Makes me laugh every time.
I thought you might say Moneyball or something really obvious. So which superhero best typifies you?
Don't know why, but somehow Professor X.
Ooh,
okay.
Good answer. Nice.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your biggest weakness?
Nearly forgot this, but forgetfulness. That's the only reason I have habits and systems. I forget things all the time. Drives the wife crazy.
Guilty.
And laziness a bit as well, if I'm honest.
Surely you just write everything down, don't you? It's in a
That's
spreadsheet.
why. Yeah.
So, contra to that, what's your biggest strength?
I think actually probably over the years I've come to find it's the ability to quickly understand something new at a high level, but get my head around it and then communicate it effectively. And I can just keep ahead of the crowd on that.
Rare skill indeed, particularly in the data world. I think we all struggle with that one, to be honest. So, what's one thing that people perhaps don't know about you?
Almost born in Israel, almost adopted to Hong Kong, and spent the first few years of my life in a children's home.
That's like 2 truths and 1 lie, isn't it? I think we're trying to work out which one it is.
All true.
Blimey. That might make the next question really easy. So what's the most adventurous thing you've done in your life? That could be any one of those 3 things.
I suppose so, but I've decided it was having children. I contemplated that it was having an analytics team out in Bangalore and trying to make that work, or it was moving across the country for the sake of a church where we didn't know people at all, both of which felt pretty scary. But the thing I was most terrified of in my whole life, wife still reminds me I was white as a sheet, was discovering I'd become a father. And I think the hardest thing I've done in all my life is the raising of the kids, and it's the most scary. So that one.
So data's easy by comparison to having
data's
children.
Easy compared to kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Agree.
So what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Slow down and listen more.
Nice.
Interesting. What's your guilty pleasure?
Escaping people at social functions. When I'm at social or family functions, I like to find a way to slip away into a quiet room or so and just get a bit of time by myself because I'm tired of them and they wear me out.
I'm with you on that one. Quite good. So, easy one. What's your favourite food?
Difficult one as well. I've decided a really good pain au raisin or croissant with a coffee. A really good flaky one rich in butter. That's the one.
Okay. I thought you might say lava bread or something, from down in Wales, something very traditionally Welsh, perhaps. No. Okay. Okay. Come on, you must have done this. So what's your best personal use of Excel or perhaps some analytics outside of work?
Probably I'm a treasurer for a refugee charity. And they love, I think I just love it because they love it so much, my visual summary of the finances on a quarterly basis. They all love a good bit of data visualization and they don't think they get it elsewhere. So I really enjoy that. It's data visualization for fun of the charity finances.
I should add, we used to ask this as a question in interview, and I did steal someone's idea when they told me that they used it to cook a roast dinner. And ever since that day, probably 15 years ago, I've used it to cook Christmas dinner. And the input cell is what time does the mother-in-law intend turning up? And all the times of when you start everything adjusts in real time. So, yeah, everyone makes fun of that as what I do on Christmas Day. So if you hadn't found data, where would you be and what would you be doing now, do you think?
Either I'd be a weather presenter for the meteorology background and the presentation side, or I'd be a monk just to get away from people.
I think we're getting a bit of a hint here. We end this podcast now as it's been interrupted by bad weather in the Welsh area. So, who would you say is your biggest inspiration?
This
Obviously,
is mushy.
3 of us.
This is mushy, but I'd have to say my wife, actually.
That's nice.
So she's a very courageous person. She's honest completely to a fault. She's compassionate to other people. She gives me a tough time a lot of the time, but I have genuinely been inspired by her character over the years. If I limited myself to a work environment, I'd probably say a chap called William Bust, actually. Sorry, guys, you're all lovely as well. But William appeared multiple times in my career. So back when I was in Lloyds, he's the guy who helped me believe I could move from the IT background into the business side. And why don't you take responsibility for recommending on reinsurance? Oh, I couldn't do that, William. I haven't done underwriting exams. Of course you could. Give it a try. And then when I was leaving Lloyds, I'd seen him already set up his own business and head out on his own. So it's been someone to be that inspiration that, of course you can do it. Give it a try.
Good. So if you could resurrect one person from history and put them back in the world today, who would it be? Okay,
so I'll resist all the obvious. Obviously, Jesus did, but I'd have to go on with Blaise Pascal, I think.
Okay. Can you expand on why?
Okay, all right. So Pascal, but people probably don't remember necessarily, but he was both a brilliant inventor. Like, he invented one of the first calculating machines, invented the first public transport system, massive contributions to maths and science as well. But he was also, in that wonderful way that you kind of got Renaissance man as well, he was also a moral philosopher, a theologian. He had no problem bringing together his Christian faith and science, and he was able to engage with all the challenges of the day from a moral and a philosophical point of view as well. And I just think, with what we're moving into, we need people who've got the brilliant enough minds to be able to engage with the developments in technology and science, but not to be adrift from their own moral anchor and the ethics and the philosophy that guide them as well. And I think probably more than anyone else managed to span both worlds.
Good answer.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, Paul, and I think we could leave this one for part 2 as well, but it is something that I do have a bit of a fear of. I think that we need to align innovation with ethics at every stage, because before we know it, it's too late. This is a great thing, but maybe the ethical consideration hasn't been inbuilt from the beginning. And it does worry me slightly about the rapid pace of development in the industry. It's back to the classic Jurassic Park, so busy obsessing over whether you could, you never thought about whether you should. And I think it's a great point you've raised. Yeah. Okay, gents, that brings us to the end of section 2. Time for a quick drink of water as we brace ourselves for Michael's section. Part 3, sir.
Right.
The floor is yours.
Right. Got a few kind of formal questions at the moment, Paul. I've been just think while we've been talking there, I've got loads of stuff just running through my head, different stories, different events, different things that have happened probably over the 20 years, but we'll keep that for after this section, because I'll just go way off tangent. That's my usual anyway. So I'll try and keep the script at the moment. But this has been great so far, really good. So just what would you say is one piece of business advice you take for granted now, but you wish you'd known at the start of your career?
I know this is going to sound like it would just be what I would say, given as Rob says I've been banging on about it for years, but that it's actually all about people. If I think back to the beginning of my career, you are so keen to master the technology, to learn the particular technical skills, use the right language in the business, or all these other things, which do matter, but they're hygiene factors. In the long run, you discover it's about your ability to communicate, to build relationships with people. And despite appearances, the organisation isn't logical, it isn't data-driven, it is people making decisions based on people that they trust. And your ability to influence people and to work collaboratively with other people is the most powerful driver of your success. Don't miss out the hygiene factors, but don't neglect the people side.
Yeah, I think one thing I've certainly taken from the past 40, 50 minutes is it is all about the people and the mentoring people, developing people, and really looking after people within your team and winning the hearts and minds as well. It's a great reminder to everybody who's listening to this podcast today that that's what's really important when building something that's you're going to have success with. So great, thanks for that. So looking at the role of the customer insight leader today, how is that role different to the role you'd have carried out throughout your career?
Yeah, well, first off, let me acknowledge the term has almost completely died out. Maybe with my passing, no one will refer to customer insight leaders anymore. It might be the final death knell of the role title. And that doesn't matter. What we call it in some ways doesn't matter. But I think the risk with the focus of the job titles we've got at the moment is it's entirely technological for technology's sake. It's what you do rather than why you do it. It's data scientist, it's data engineer, it's data ops. And you could get lost in that, the fact that one of the goals of your organisation is to better understand the people you can serve in order to bring the right products and services to the market, meet needs they don't maybe even recognise at the moment that they've got. And if we lose the curiosity, if we lose the bringing together of multiple insights into people from different disciplines to converge them and to get to some deeper mindsets as to why people are acting like they are, I think we'll really lose a valuable stream of, also, frankly, people who've been at this longer than the currently fashionable approach. Data science has a lot to bring to the party. I'm a lot keener on it now than I was 10 years ago. But there is statistical work that predates that. And there are people who've been working on data for longer who know the difference it can make if you use your data and your analytics skill to really understand your customers and not just deliver automation, not just deliver data products, but deliver insights, deliver an understanding that can inspire what your organization does and maybe even change your organization.
Do you feel on that one, Paul, that there is a danger, it's almost Emperor's New Clothes-esque, that if we look at it, we just focus in on that narrow window of understanding your customer better, that these iterations, technological iterations, and the speed at which they're happening are causing the industry to lose sight of the fact that at that point itself, what you're trying to do is better understand the customer? Do you think there's a danger that that could be happening?
In some cases, yes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing for a binary there, wrong, we're right. It's a both. The people who are focusing their work on more efficient organisations and automation, absolutely needed. People who are focusing on delivering data products so that you don't need to have decisions and things, absolutely needed. They can make a difference. They're just not the whole of what's needed. You need to do that, and you need to have insights to understand. And that can be argued, I would say, even from a commercial point of view, let alone a data point of view. Long term, the financially successful organisations understood their customer base better than their competitors. And whether what they brought was innovation, whether they brought improved service, they responded to that deeper understanding of their customer base better than their competition. And you don't want to lose that, otherwise you will run the risk that the currently useful just runs out once it's made the organisation more efficient.
Definitely. I'll move on to the next question, unless anyone's got anything else. I feel as if we've covered this one probably through other questions, but you can briefly touch on it if you feel. So tools, technologies and techniques come and go. What are the ever-presents that every data leader should focus on mastering? Okay,
well, of course, because you say we've covered it already, I've got loads to say. So this is my way. So the one I tried to limit myself, but the ones that were buzzing around my ever curious mind. Firstly, I think the first one I would have to say is people leadership. The ever present is technical people, particularly leaders with a technology background, need to be able to delegate well, not be the micromanager who drove me to despair, be able to do that stuff well. Secondly, critical thinking skills. Being able to step back and really think about something, avoid binary thinking, avoid how things have always been done before, be able to critically evaluate information and how to go forward. Self-organisation. I find a high number of leaders and particularly their teams, even though they're brilliant technically, they cannot organise their diary or their day. Take control of your day, build habits of planning and prioritisation that work for you. Self-awareness and the label I put on it of adaptive leadership, to genuinely know yourself better, understand your strengths and weaknesses, collaborate with other people in light of that, and be able to adapt your style to the politics and the constituencies you're working among. The ability to have difficult conversations. This is broader than data. This is an old guy complaining about the world today. But leaders generally are too soft, and so are organisations, and it isn't helping people. I walk into all sorts of organisations, and time again, I discover a difficult conversation that hasn't been had. Someone hasn't been told they're not up to their job. Someone hasn't been pushed to move on because that job doesn't suit them. They can't really do it. Having the tough conversations is kind. It's not cruel. It's kinder to have those direct conversations with people. Next one, nearly there, Michael. I think.
No, I'm just laughing about something. I'll touch on it in a minute. Actually.
Okay. I think being able to keep up to date, I do feel for this next generation, because the technical development and this range of skills this generation of leaders is expected to have is immense, absolutely immense. So the ability to have enough passing knowledge about a lot of things is a key skill. And being able to build in place processes and habits that work for you to keep sufficiently up to speed that you can talk intelligently with your teams and you can make decisions without needing to go down the rabbit warren of taking 4 or 5 different qualifications and you're trying to become more commercial and a leader at the same time. Don't burn yourself out. Find a way to do that. And lastly, connect with your values. Ensure in what you do that you can connect with why do you do this, who are you, and what matters most to you. Being able to connect with that will be an anchor for you through the ups and downs of working life.
Oh, great answers. Really good. Yeah, definitely. I was just laughing there. Sorry, jumping off tangent as I knew I would, but I had to. I can remember when I first started MBN back in 2007, and we'd have started working with Lloyds straight away. Probably 6 months after my restrictions finished, we'd have been straight in with Lloyds, thanks to yourself and other guys like Tony Brown. We worked with Lloyds for years, probably placed hundreds of people across the business, across all the Verde projects, loads and loads and loads of work there. So it was really, really good. So massive thanks for that. But I can remember when you're talking about difficult conversations and really keeping people right, I brought in he's my now managing director. So he'd have joined the MBN, young guy, probably about 2008, just new into the recruitment world, and I was really teaching him about data analytics. I was only in it a few years myself, so just really learning about it, but we worked well. We were doing well in it, and I can always remember. I don't know if you've ever thought of yourself about as being a scary guy. I can always remember when Peter worked with you. I think he was just new, and you were really thorough, professional. You kept him right, but that was the best thing you could have ever done for us, because you were teaching us, and the conversations about candidates, we had to really present the candidates well and know our stuff inside out. So it was a massive lesson for us. I can always remember Peter used to dread getting on the phone if the phone would go, and if he was presenting CVs to you, and an email would come in and you wanted a conversation, he would be panicking just because he knew he really had to be on his A game. So just made me laugh when you were mentioning there. It just took me down memory lane there. It was good. Great lesson.
Peter was unavailable today, was he?
I know. It's funny. Still with us today, so good lesson. Probably talking about imposter syndrome. It's a big kind of thing about probably imposter syndrome back then, when you were a kind of junior recruiter and you're getting in dealing with big scary customer insight leaders at the time.
Do you think it's interesting, Paul? You listed off a whole load of stuff there, which we all call softer skills because they're not technical skills, or non-technical skills we'll call them. But actually, when a lot of people talk about this, that we see job adverts and people go through the recruitment process, and no matter how senior you are, you can be director of data and analytics, and they go, "Can you code in SQL? Can you build this? Can you write an LLM?" It's like, yeah, I did, I could, but do you need me to do that, or do you need me to motivate the team and plan and strategize? It's like, yes, there are some chief marketing officers that probably still get down and dirty with some Google Analytics, etc. But in reality, if you're the CMO in a big organization, they're not writing the content and whatever, they're running the team. So why do we seem to think data people should still be able to code an LLM and write SQL and Python and stuff? It's like, it's still stay. It just seems to be wrong when we seem to be recruiting. The people recruiting are recruiting the wrong people almost.
Yeah, completely agree, Graeme. I think it's partly insecurity, and it's partly an inability to actually understand the field. But the people outside don't understand how to ask for, has that strategic understanding of data and can help the organisation benefit from make a difference. So they reduce down to, LLMs, that's right. Yeah, let's ask if they can do that stuff, because that's our understanding of this technical stuff. They failed to develop a language around how would you describe an effective data leader rather than a data practitioner. So they fall down on, we'll go for the technical proofs because they must have to know that stuff. Yeah, it happens too much.
Yeah, and from my observations, it happens in that discovery phase where there's not been an adequate separation between wants and needs. I might want a person at that level to be able to code in SQL, but do I really need them to? And if we ask that question honestly, the response is no, we don't. It would be nice if they came from that background, but it's not going to be an essential pass-fail whether they can do their job. And I think what we're finding is that with a lot of organisations, they're conflating wants and needs, going out to the market with this, or an expectation that everybody would have these together. And what they should really do is separate them out and say, focus on the needs, and the wants will look after themselves.
Definitely.
Good advice.
Okay, last one from myself. So with regards to other data leaders looking towards the next step in their career journey, perhaps retirement or setting up their own, what advice would you give them?
I think don't fear change. Change can be a good thing. This is going to sound very idealistic probably, but I'd encourage them to almost see their life like acts in a play. In reality, we are different versions of ourselves at different stages. You think back to, you needed to be a different version of you to get through education and do as well as you could, to start to be ambitious and charging forward at the beginning of your career, raising a family, changing to be a manager or a leader, navigating all that midlife doubt and crisis that you have. And it's the same toward the end. We all have within ourselves different aspects of our personality. We could call them personas if we like. And I get the analogy in my head that like different ones of them get to be on the throne at different times. You know, in this situation, I need to be this version of me. All of me is still there, but this one gets to come to the fore. Enjoy that. Embrace it. You've had other phases of your life where you've needed to be driving forward and pushing for the career, or you've needed to focus on navigating diplomatically corporate politics. What parts of you are unfulfilled? What parts of you that still you could come to the fore and get to play a different act of the play in this next stage? I haven't regretted any of the ones looking back. It's a nice thing to be able to say. I look back on my career in Lloyds. I look back on my time running my own business, delighted, privileged, pleased, thankful to have had both opportunities. But I look forward to retirement as well. I'll get to be a different version of me and enjoy and relish expressing that as well.
I think it's a really good point. I've been thinking about the same. You know, I'm getting into that last. You know, could be a few years. It could be 5 years. Don't know. But you have to start planning about it. You know, I obviously had a much easier paper rounds than any of you guys, but I'm giving it some thought. Like, what do I want to do? You know, do I want to stop the rat race but still work in data, try and get into non-exec? I don't think I want to do my own thing necessarily for the last few years, but I think there's definitely things, like you said, having a serious think about what do you want to do and what makes you happy, not just carrying on doing the same old because you think you have to and because it, pays a check at the end of the month. It's like, that's not enough. It's not enough for me anyway.
Agreed.
Yeah, definitely think as well it's try and enjoy what you're doing the best of your ability while you're doing it on any given day, because if we all know the way economies and the way the world's running at the moment, anything can change. Like if you're planning things over the next 5 years, it could be very different. So just to try and enjoy the moment and do what you're doing in any given day.
Absolutely.
Paul, you spoke earlier on about the role that you had where you'd moved into almost an internal consultancy role, and you'd started talking to different parts of the business, different stakeholders, which prepared you well for setting up on your own. So that looks to me to be quite a smooth and logical progression. But what were the hard bits of doing that? I mean, obviously the obvious is suddenly you got to go and get cash flow generated. But what were the hardest bits outside of that, moving from working for a large organisation to suddenly being the same type of person, but being it on your own?
Being in the same place all the time. I mean, it overlapped, of course, relatively soon after that with kind of COVID days and whatever. So that kind of was the fate of all of us, though I was using Zoom for coaching a long time before most people had heard of it. But I think being in your space and continuing to believe, as you're sitting there in your room at home, that you are running a business that's going to be successful. And you have to connect with motivation and put in place habits of organisation with no one else there to tell you to do it. So learning to do that, I think, is a key thing. And I think then kind of thinking of, I sound schizophrenic, obviously, the way I talk about this, but thinking of yourself as having several hats. So now what you're doing in running your own business, you want to protect some time to put your finance director hat on. Like, I'm now finance director. I'm going to look and think about things from a finance point of view. But remember, you also have to be able to put on your marketing hat and your sales hat and your customer service hat, and your innovation hat. All these things matter as well. And I think it sounds a bit silly, but being able to think of, I still wear multiple hats now in doing this. How can I look at what I'm doing and what I need to do from different perspectives, almost as if I am my own board, and I'm multiple ones of that. And lastly, it will feel lonely. Recognise that and make friends. I have to say, out on my own, and this will be a surprise to people probably, because you think differently in corporate life, I have discovered other people as being more supportive and more collaborative and more helpful to my success than I generally did outside my own team within corporate life. I think within corporate life it is more competitive because of the ridiculous performance management systems that don't work anyway. And actually you find a lot of the time out there in the small business world and with people who are trying to start things up, there's a lot of goodwill toward you. Although it can seem a surprise at first, and you doubt it, there are a lot of people out there who'd like to help if they could. So connect with those people, be a bit humble in people that you recognise could actually help you at this stage. That will help a lot as well.
Wise words. We're almost at the end, gents, and we're now reaching the finishing line. I just want to say, from my own perspective, Paul, thank you, mate. You've helped me numerous times with the wise words, bit of coaching, bit of advice here and there, and it's certainly helped me to develop what I hope has become a little bit more of a rounder and more professional character to doing all this kind of stuff. So, mate, you know the drill. Thank you. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Will. Thank you. It means a lot. Thank you.
And I echo that, Paul. I think I'd say the same, Paul. As Rob's intro said, I was a shy, introverted person. I still am. I still like my own time. But yeah, I used to see you on the networking, and that encouraged me to, get out and about and bring that outside into my own business where I didn't feel I was getting it from, who I was necessarily reporting to, because that's not their job. And I think I hopefully encourage that to other people now to say you have to get out and meet other people in the data world and outside of the data world, because it just spirals. It's a network. Ultimately, you're going to meet people outside of data. So, thank you.
You're very welcome, Graeme. Thank you. Kind words, and for you to know, you don't come across that way. You come across as confident and fun and jokey and sarcastic, and people. It's nice for people to hear that. I think we're all tempted as leaders, I think, to be the toughest, best presentation of ourselves. But it's good for people to hear that. They don't, because a lot of the people who work for us and we lead, they're full of insecurities and introversion and all this kind of thing. And it's nice for them to remember that this champion leader who seems to fearlessly go into battle for the department, they're an introvert and they're feeling shy and they struggle with some of these things too, because it means they can do it. So good for you, Graeme.
Yeah.
No, I'm bad for myself, Paul. It's been a pleasure knowing you all these years, and I continue to keep in touch with you. I'm keen to hear how your journey goes out with your data leading stuff, and I like what you do personally as well. Your charity work, how your family are so important to you as well, and all that kind of stuff. That means a lot. And the example for your running and stuff like that as well. I've spoke to you about stuff like that over the years, and when I've tried to kind of get into stuff like that, I know you've always been kind of trying to give me, maybe no, you've always tried to give me good advice about things as well, just on a personal level. So I appreciate that. And if I never picked up that job at Lloyds back in 2005 and found John Thompson back then, I'd maybe never have done data, because at the time I was doing technology, engineering. I wasn't exclusively in data, and from there I kind of got I liked it, and I thought it was a good market. So been there for 19 years now, and which has been great. It's still going. Still back on the phones this week and working hard at the moment, so enjoying it again. Actually, really, always have enjoyed it, but really enjoying the challenge at the moment. And I just, throughout the years you spoke, you're probably one of the first people, if not maybe first or second or third, Scotland Data Science and Technology presenter. Doing back around about 2015, you get involved and came up to Edinburgh and helped us out with that. So, and I also can remember when you first started your business. I think I met you in London, and I was probably just really trying to tell you that. I think it was in the case you start a business, you've got that kind of amount of moan now, but I think my advice was, look, within a year you'll have more clients than you can probably imagine, and I think that did happen to you as well. That was my kind of advice to you, just with your reputation, who you know, what you were doing. So it's been a journey. It's been a real, just even this morning getting up, walking into Glasgow, thinking about yourself, working with you for all these years. I kind of got me thinking about Graeme as well, known him for long time as well, and really instrumental to MBN as well. Helped us get on the contract when it was a time start-up days, and but we went in and delivered. And what can I say about Rob? Worked with me side by side for a long time. Probably spoke most days. Spoke more to Rob than I have in my own family. So it's been a bit of a journey. And I think just everything about this podcast today has been about people and mentorship and development and looking after if you look after your people and give them the best, then that's where that's
sure.
Get out most results. That's what I've really taken from that as well. It's about the mentorship side and winning hearts and minds. So great.
Well, thank you to you three as well. You've all been encouragement to me. It is working with lovely people like you that's made this a delight over the years rather than a burden. So God bless all, and I do appreciate it. Kind words.
Appreciate it.
Paul, thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with us today. Thanks for sharing your passion and your knowledge, your expertise, your career reflections as we approach the end of an era with the Customer Insight Leader. And many thanks also to my two co-presenters, Graeme and Michael. Appreciated, gentlemen. I hope you, dear listener, have enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. And if you have, please take a moment to review the show on your podcast or video platform of choice, giving us 5 stars, obviously, and share this episode with anyone you feel would benefit from a view or a listen. Thanks. Please do look out for the other episodes in this podcast series where I'm joined by other special guests discussing topics relevant to today's bosses and data. Visit www.mbnsolutions.com for resources like our UK Data Salary Survey, to watch recordings of our latest data meetup events, or to download our white papers, research and thought leadership. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram and Twitter for the latest news, views, opinions and, of course, hottest opportunities in the data space. Goodbye.
Thanks very much. Cheers.